The World Cup final was supposed to decide one champion. Instead, it appeared to close one football era, ignite another, and trigger a war between two of Spain's most powerful clubs. While Lionel Messi stood on the pitch, trying to absorb what may have been his final World Cup night, Barcelona president Joan Laporta was already speaking about a future without him. And behind the scenes, Barcelona had placed a ticking clock on one of the most explosive transfers of the crazed summer. The target was Julian Alvarez. The deadline was the end of July. The response from Atletico Madrid was furious. What began as a transfer pursuit quickly became a public battle, involving money, accusations, wounded pride, and a player Atletico insisted could not be bought. Barcelona had made an official offer for the Argentine striker. Laporta confirmed that the proposal remained on the table, but he warned that it would not remain there forever. The club would soon announce exactly when the offer expired. When reporters asked whether the final deadline would arrive before July ended, Laporta's answer was direct. Probably. That single word transformed a negotiation into an ultimatum. Barcelona were telling Atletico Madrid that the window to negotiate was closing. They were also telling Alvarez that a decision could not be delayed indefinitely. But Atletico's chief executive, Miguel Angel Gilmarin, saw something completely different. He believed Barcelona were not conducting a serious transfer operation. He believed they were creating a spectacle. According to Gilmarin, Barcelona knew Alvarez was not for sale. He claimed he had personally asked Laporta to stop discussing the player in public. He said he had made Atletico's position absolutely clear. Julian Alvarez would not leave under any circumstances. Yet Barcelona continued pushing the story. To Gilmarin, the reason was obvious. He believed Barcelona wanted to excite their supporters, dominate the headlines, and create the appearance of an aggressive summer rebuild, even if the transfer was impossible. Then his criticism became personal. He accused Barcelona's leadership of misleading their own fans. He also suggested that their public campaign risked misleading the player himself. The transfer fight was no longer about a fey. It had become a test of credibility. If Barcelona completed the deal, Laporta would appear fearless. If Atletico kept Alvarez, Gilmarin could claim he had exposed the entire operation as theater. And while those two executives traded public blows, another story was unfolding around Barcelona. It was far more emotional. The 2026 World Cup final had placed two generations of the club's history on the same stage. On one side stood Lionel Messi. He was the greatest player Barcelona had ever produced, the symbol of its most glorious era, and the man whose name remained tied to almost every major success in the club's modern history. On the other side stood Lamine Yamal. He was the teenager carrying the present, the future, and the impossible expectations of becoming the next global face of football. Laporta spoke about both men with admiration, but his conclusion was ruthless. Messi represented the past. Now it was Yamal's time. Those words immediately shook the football world. Messi was not simply a former player. He was a Barcelona institution. He had grown inside La Masia, transformed the club, and created memories supporters believed could never be repeated. Yet Laporta insisted that football obeyed its own law. Every era eventually ended. Every throne eventually needed a successor, and in his eyes, Yamal was ready. The symbolism became even more extraordinary because of one famous photograph. Years earlier, during a charity event organized by the Barcelona Foundation, a young Lionel Messi had been photographed bathing a baby Lamine Yamal. At the time, it had been an innocent image from a community campaign. No one could have understood what it might one day represent. Then the baby became one of football's greatest young talents. The photograph returned before the World Cup final and spread across the world. It looked less like an old charity picture and more like a prophecy. Messi appeared to be blessing the child who would one day stand across from him on the sport's biggest stage. Laporta described the image as an accident, or perhaps something closer to a divine plan. Reality had created a scene more dramatic than fiction. But Laporta did not want the photograph to remain a sentimental memory. He wanted it to represent Barcelona's greatest institutional weapon, La Masia. The academy had produced Messi. Now it had produced Yamal, Gavi, Pau, Cubarsí, Eric Garcia, a new generation capable of influencing a World Cup final. Barcelona could lose money. It could lose presidents. It could lose star players. But the academy kept producing new dreams. Laporta said that was the source of his pride. Several players connected to Barcelona had reached the final, proving that the club's footballing identity remained alive far beyond its stadium. And among all of them, Yamal carried the greatest pressure. Laporta believed the teenager would not be broken by it. He described him as a genius with unusual courage and maturity. While older players might spend the night before a final unable to sleep, Laporta joked that Yamal would sleep peacefully. The match might have been the biggest of his life, but he would approach it as if it were being played near the streets where he had grown up. That calmness was exactly why Laporta wanted the final to become Yamal's night. He believed certain players defined one age, then disappeared as another age arrived. Messi had given Barcelona years of glory. But football had already begun turning the page. The statement sounded cold. Then the final ended, and the emotional cost of that new era became visible. Messi remained on the pitch, surrounded by noise but trapped inside his own thoughts. A World Cup final was unlike any other match. Every sacrifice, every injury, every year of preparation, and every national dream had been compressed into one night. Messi had experienced football's greatest victories and its most painful defeats. But this moment felt different. At 39, he understood that every match carried a value it had not possessed when he was younger. He knew the journey had an ending. He did not announce his retirement. He did not say the final goodbye had arrived. But he admitted that his heart was telling to him something terrifying. This might have been the last time he would ever experience a World Cup in that way. The possibility changed the meaning of everything around him. The stadium was no longer just a stadium. The shirt was no longer just a shirt. The teammates standing beside him were no longer simply players who had shared one tournament. They were witnesses to the final chapter of an extraordinary journey. Messi's first reaction was not anger. It was pride. He praised the Argentine team for fighting through every obstacle and reaching the final together. He rejected the idea that one man had carried them. Argentina had arrived through collective sacrifice. Every player had suffered. Every member of the staff had worked in places cameras never reached. Every supporter had pushed them forward from the stands, the streets, and homes thousands of miles away. Messi reserved special gratitude for Lionel Scaloni. Scaloni had inherited a national team trapped beneath years of pressure and disappointment. He had built trust. He had convinced the players to believe in each other. He had created a group strong enough to survive criticism, lose together, recover together, and eventually become world champions. For Messi, that bond mattered more than any statistic. Late in his career, individual records no longer carried the same emotional weight. The faces in the crowd mattered more. The people in Argentina who wanted one simple thing mattered more. They wanted the team to make them proud. That desire had carried the players when their legs were empty. It had carried Messi through the final years of a career that had already given him more than he could have imagined as a child in Rosario. He felt gratitude for the beautiful moments. He also felt gratitude for the painful honest. The defeats had shaped him as completely as the trophies. They had created the player and the person who now stood on the field understanding that nothing lasted forever. Messi thanked his teammates. He thanked Scaloni and the coaching staff. He thanked the workers whose names the public rarely knew. And he thanked every Argentine who had supported the team with a song, a message, or even a silent prayer. Whatever happened next, he would carry those memories with him. The statement sounded like gratitude. It also sounded dangerously close to a farewell. Then Spain's coach, Luis de la Fuente, revealed what preparing for Messi had done to him. A week before the final, one of his assistants had asked, "A simple question, how many players should mark Messi?" De la Fuente had responded with a joke. Spain would give him the entire pitch. After facing him, the coach realized the joke had been closer to the truth than he intended. Modern football was controlled by numbers. Coaches measured distance covered, pressing actions, touches, accelerations, and maximum speed. Entire tactical plans were built from data, but Messi did not fit inside that system. His running distance was not always the highest. His speed was not the fastest. His number of touches did not explain his influence. Yet when the match ended, his presence could be found in almost everything important that had happened. That contradiction had obsessed de la Fuente. Coaches prepared for numbers. Messi played outside them. From the sideline, the Spanish coach watched a 39-year-old read the field as if it were already open in front of him. Messi did not react after a space appeared. He recognized it before anyone else knew it existed. He did not defeat defenders only with his feet. He defeated them with time. He saw what the game would become 2 seconds before the others did. De la Fuente believed age normally destroyed physical advantages. So Spain's original plan had been logical. They would increase the tempo. They would stretch the match. They would force Messi to chase the ball. Eventually, age would catch him. The Spanish players followed the plan with discipline, but the expected collapse never came. The Messi visible after 10 minutes remained the same Messi in the final stages. The theory had failed. De La Fuente realized that Messi did not depend entirely on qualities age removed. He depended on qualities time could sharpen: vision, calmness, anticipation, the ability to understand a match before everyone else. The coach also noticed something almost disturbing. Messi never appeared consumed by the tension. World Cup finals transformed players. They shouted, they argued, they rushed decisions. They allowed fear to take control. Messi remained calm. De La Fuente admitted that he envied that peace. Spain had prepared every tactical detail available to them. Their players had shown courage and refused to abandon their identity. Their young generation had proven it belonged on the greatest stage. But the coach believed their most valuable lesson was not tactical. They had stood on the same field as a player people would still discuss 50 years later. That experience could not be purchased. It could not be recreated in training. And it could not be explained by a spreadsheet. By the end of the night, every storyline had collided. Barcelona were publicly fighting Atletico Madrid over Julian Alvarez. Laporta was demanding that the club move from Messi's age into Yamal's. The famous photograph of Messi and the infant Yamal had become the symbol of a passing torch. Messi was confronting the possibility that his final World Cup night had arrived, and the opposing coach was admitting that even the most detailed plan had limits. Football had spent years trying to measure Lionel Messi. The final produced the same conclusion it had produced so many times before. The numbers could describe the match. They could not completely describe him. Barcelona might call him the past. Yamal might represent the future. A transfer deadline might dominate the next headline. But on the night one era appeared to end, Luis de La Fuente delivered the most powerful verdict of all. There were limits to what planning could accomplish. Lionel Messi was where those limits ended.